Okay, so we got the black pieces again. So, okay, let's go with the Sicilian, because I'm just going to try and walk through how I'm going to use the Sicilian to win against the 638. Okay, so what I'm doing with the Sicilian here is basically the aim of this is that I want to trade off this pawn for their pawn here and get 2 pawns in the middle of the board, and they only have 1 pawn in the middle of the board. So basically, what we're trying to do with the Sicilian is control the center using one of our pawns that are on the side of the board. And of course, you could also do this with something like f5, but unfortunately, something like f5 weakens the king a lot. So c5 is what we do instead, to control the center with a pawn that doesn't weaken our king. So they play c4, which sort of shuts down a lot of what I'm trying to do here. So it's actually kind of annoying opening to face, but it's nothing to be too afraid of. What we're going to do instead is try and make sure that we use our pieces to control the center. They're not really fighting to push for d4, so let's just place knight c6 here. And now we're controlling the d4 square. And my plan is going to be to push e5 and control all of these squares in the center of the board here, and then maybe fianchetto my bishop out and start attacking the b2 pawn, because when they push c4, that means they can never play c3. So the good thing about that is this b2 pawn can be a good target in the future. Okay, so they play knight f3. I'm thinking about e5. I'm also thinking about g6 straight away. I could go for something flexible like d6, which controls e5, but doesn't commit to pushing it just yet. So I'm just going to push d6 here. I'm actually not too familiar with this opening, so I'm just trying to play logically and what makes sense. But yeah, you don't really see this a whole lot, so it's cool to see how we're going to be facing this. All right, so they bring their knight out. And let's play knight to f6 here now, controlling d5. And then we're also going to put pressure on this e4 pawn. So d3 is played here. This sort of shows that they're not intending to open up the position with d4. So they want to control the light squares. You'll notice all their pawns in the center are going to be on light squares. So they're controlling with those pawns the light squares. And what I'm doing is trying to control the dark squares. So it's a little bit of an imbalance, even though the pawn structure is going to be perfectly symmetrical after I push something like e5. We will be controlling different colors of the board. So I'm controlling these dark squares here, which means that I'm going to, at some point, trying to put a piece on something like b4 or f4 or d4 is a good plan for me, whereas for them, their plan will be to put a piece on f5 or d5 or b5, using the fact that they're controlling these squares very well. So now they're going bishop g5 here, and this is actually a very smart positional plan by my opponent. Because what they're going to do is take control of the fact I pushed d5 forward, and now d5 is a weak square. So they're going to try and put this knight on d5. And the plan might be to take, and then after my queen takes, they can develop this knight into the center of the board, which is a really strong square, and attack my queen, force it to move back. Now, what I might do here is play bishop e6, just to sort of keep an eye on this square. Feels a little bit scary though. But if they ever jump in to here with the knight now, what I can do is just take the knight. Yeah, I was thinking about taking the knight. I'm not sure if this is actually going to be good though. Okay, so I was thinking I'd just take here, because then instead of being able to put a piece on d5, so instead of being able to put a piece in the center, they have to put their pawn there, which means the piece can't go there. But one problem about this, if I do take, is that now I won't be able to control this f5 and this f5 square with my bishop anymore after I take. I could go bishop e7 here, and this would sort of defend everything. I think I'm going to go for bishop e7. Because at the moment, if they usually you're thinking, okay, a bishop is better than a knight, but this bishop for me is bad at the moment because it's stuck behind all these pawns. So I'm thinking if they trade off here, I'm happy to get rid of my bad bishop that's stuck behind pawns for their knight that's really strong in the center. So this is fine. Okay. So yeah, now I'm going to capture here. I'm going to capture with the queen rather than the knight or king because, well, I want a castle, so I won't capture with the king. But I take with the queen, because when they take here, I want to be able to take with the queen and not double my pawns. So that's why I didn't capture with the knight. And this is also a nice square for the queen as well. And yeah, my plan might be eventually to try and put a piece on this d4 square or b4 square. So sometimes one of the hard parts about chess is knowing where to put your pieces. And that really comes from learning about different pawn structures. So if you're in a position where your opponent has all their pieces, all their pawns on light squares, putting a piece on a dark square is usually a good solution because they can't push their pawns and attack you like this. True, you could open up the G file for the rook if you do take with the pawn, but the problem is that it doesn't actually really do much, bringing this rook over to the G file. Even though you could say you're attacking this pawn, it's not really doing a lot. They could even just push G3 and put their bishop here, and then you just have a problem that you don't want to castle either side. I guess this knight wants to go to f5, right? But if they go to f5, I'm just going to take it. And also now my knight can jump into d4. But what I'm thinking about doing first is maybe playing h6. Queen a5, okay, I did think about queen a5. So you were saying after knight d5 to maybe go queen a5. Now, the thing is here, they can just bring their bishop back to d2 here and attack me. And then once my queen comes back, what they can do is just shuffle back. So it doesn't actually help me progress with anything in the position. They can just bring their bishop back and forth, and I don't actually achieve much from doing that. Okay, so let's take here. Now, of course, this knight is under attack. Okay, so here my opponent has actually given up a pawn. So I can just take here, and after the pawn takes back, I can just capture here. Now, it is a bishop versus knight situation. So usually people prefer the bishop a little bit, but this knight is going to be really, really good on this square because they've pushed this c4 pawn forward. And this is like the one downside of playing c4 in the opening. This d4 square is always going to be weak. My plan is to go d4 with the knight and then control all of these squares around the king. And yeah, my opponent's bishop could be a little bit annoying since it's going to have a really nice way of cutting through all the light squares in the board. Wow, okay. G4 is not a move I would have expected. So G4 is something I'm, again, not a big fan of either, because pushing the G pawn, pushing the G or F pawns, when you want to castle on the king side, it's never really a great decision. And it doesn't look like my opponent wants to castle this side either, because you don't want to castle your king somewhere where you're already pushing all the pawns. You want to castle your king to get it safe. So you don't want to be pushing the pawns like this. Sometimes there's exception, but at the moment, I think let's just go queen f4 and then prepare go here. Now, I guess their plan is maybe to go bishop g2, and then if I go knight d4, take on b7, sorry. But my plan might be just to give up the pawn and go rook b8. So what I'm thinking is knight d4 here, and then after they capture on b7, my rook goes to b8, attacking the bishop. I do have to think about queen a4 check and everything though, so it's something I have to calculate. Okay, so knight d4, bishop takes b7, rook b8. Now, if we have queen a4, king e7, queen a7, king f6, gets a little scary. But I really like the look of playing knight d4. That's the problem here, is I don't want to lose my knight. Okay, so knight d4, bishop takes b7, rook b8, maybe after queen a4, king f8, queen a7, and rook b8. I think I'm going to go for something a little crazy here. Here the bishop is probably going to take on b7. So I'm just trying to work out, is rook b8 the right move? Because then after this, the queen can check me. And after king e7, takes on a7, and king f6, my king should be safe from checks. And my plan is to take on b2 and start attacking on the second rank. So that's the plan. Okay, so they do take here. So yes, my plan is rook b8, and after queen a4 to actually walk the king over to f6. And let's see. Okay, they did calculate this through. Wait, I'm not sure. In my mind, I calculated they could take on a7 with check, but maybe they can't. It does get a little bit scary with some revealed check with the bishop. Yeah, my visualization was not on point there, but all right, so queen takes here. I am thinking of just going for king f6 anyway to get out of checks. I can, of course, go for knight c2. It's a little tricky though. Okay, instead go for bishop d5 here. Now this is a nice plan actually from my opponent. Their plan is queen a7, and then after king f6 to take on f7 with the queen there. This is a really good plan. Okay, so if I take here, queen a7, king f6, that's to get a little crazy. Yeah, nice move by my opponent, I have to say. Never castle. Illegal. I could go something like rook d8. That does give away my plan. I'm getting a little scared. I can't really go for this rook to d8. Can I? Maybe I can do this. This could be a plan. Rook d8, queen a7, king f8, and then we can start attacking them over here. There's also the threat of the fork that they have to deal with. I don't know whether it'll be enough. This might not be the right plan. I'm trying to think if there's anything better. Could go king f6 straight away. So then after queen a7, knight c2 comes with a check. King d1 takes, queen f7. I think I get into trouble there. Okay. I am going to play rook d8 here. And the plan is after queen a7, my king gets to escape over to f8 here. So let's just bring the king over this way. Yeah, they're actually playing very well, but I think I have a really nice attack here. It may look like my position is bad, but I have a nice attack. I've got the threat of the fork over here. B2 is under attack. Their king is super weak also. And now my king's getting more and more safe as it's walking over this way. Now, maybe what I should have done instead of trying to be so aggressive is that I should have just let them trade on c6 and just get my king castled and play solid up a pawn. Instead, I went a little too aggressive here. And maybe that's something we can learn from. But let's keep it going. My opponent's doing a great job at finding some nice moves though. And the good thing is my king can sort of just keep walking and escape over here, and my queen does defend this attack. Okay, now this we just can take here, and we're just going to be up a piece. Now, another thing that we can do is go for the rook instead. I can also go rook takes b2. Trying to work out what is the best. So the great thing about this is they have no immediate threat of checkmate. So I'm going to go rook takes b2 here. Now we've got a big threat on the second rank. This should just be a win now. Let's see how my opponent defends. You know, they found some very good defensive ideas. So, I mean, I think at some point they were probably even better. Ooh, see, again a nice move. Check. Is it a good move though? Check. King h1, check here. And then mate. Wait, check here. Check here. Ooh, can I pre-move it? Okay. I thought it was a great move, but well, and unfortunately blunders. But we got it now. Okay, GG's. So we won that game. Let's analyze. All right, I was never losing, so that's a good sign. Let's have a look at the analysis chat. So yeah, here, okay, I did think maybe it was better to play e5 straight away. I decided to play d6 instead, but yeah, it's probably better to start off with e5. Okay, it wants me to pin the knight to the queen. But yeah, here this is all pretty good. Okay, so here they take. And yeah, I think the thing here was that I wanted to get this bishop off the board, and I wanted to get their knight off the board. So their knight was so far into my camp that I was very happy to give up this dark square bishop that was stuck behind all my pawns and for this. So yep. So yeah, here knight h4 I said I wasn't a big fan of, because the idea of going knight to f5, it doesn't really threaten a whole lot, because I will take when that happens, and I'll put my knight on d4. I think it's very important to try and make sure that I'm not able to have complete control over d4. So h6, and then we trade. Yeah, here they give up a pawn. This was probably their first big mistake of the game. So I think they could have just gone back to f3 here. I mean, probably even g3 would have been fine. So yeah, just bringing the knight back was completely fine for my opponent. I think instead, sometimes you can get a little bit tunnel visioned. You just want to go forward. You don't want to go back. It feels bad to go back, because it's like, well, why did I bring my knight forward if I'm just going to go back? I need to bring it forward. But yeah, sometimes that's just the best idea, to go backwards. And then, yeah, g4 was okay. It was just meaning that in the future, their king did not have anywhere safe to go. Okay, so okay, I'm glad that this was not a bad move by me. I thought I was maybe being a little bit too crazy by allowing them to take here. Okay, but this is completely fine and winning for me. I did feel a little worried I was being too ambitious, but I think just the fact that we have such a great knight here controlling so many squares, and then we have a lot of pressure down the b file, it's okay to allow these checks. Okay, king f8 was better, which I find interesting. So what are we meant to do after queen a7? Okay, go rook e8. I guess maybe to push d5. That's a little bit strange though. Okay. Okay, so this was the best move in the end. I'm glad I found that, because that was sort of tricky. There wasn't a lot of good moves here. It was easy to mess up with all these threats of coming in and giving checks. See, if I took on b2 after queen a7, then after king f8, they can keep checking me over here. So I can't actually find a way to win in this position, really. So I had to find a way to defend. Okay, wow. Okay, so apparently I was meant to sacrifice. That's crazy. What is this? Rook d7, queen g4 is the idea. To go for checkmate here. Okay. Well, that's a really cool idea. I didn't see that. The idea is that there's really no way to defend this threat for white. Posmate 11. Like if you go f3, queen g2, I'm coming in here. There's absolutely no way to defend it. That's crazy. Okay, so anyway, I didn't find that awesome rook sack. Instead, I went king f8, and here they gave away the bishop. And yeah, I could have just taken here, and this would also be winning. Apparently, queen f3 was a better move here. Again, going for this idea. But instead, I take here, and then there's just a checkmate. Okay, overall, my opponent played very well in the opening. They played very well in the opening. They played solidly. But sometimes the problem of these openings, where you play solidly, you have to know some positional ideas, right? Which is sometimes a little bit difficult to get a grasp on. The reason why you would be building up this pawn structure as white is that you want to control the light squares. And you want to make sure you can control the light squares as well as possible. And they did have the idea of jumping in like this, but to trade off this knight for this bishop just made it a lot more difficult for them because they want to keep this knight in the center and then also just try and make sure that I can't control the dark squares too well. And yeah, here was just the blunder of the pawn. I think this comes up a lot where, especially at the lower levels, people are just afraid to move their pieces back where they started. So yeah, that was the other thing I noticed, where they gave up the pawn. And then over here, they started playing quite well, but this bishop move, I can't quite explain it. I think it was maybe just a move of desperation. Perhaps they just had not much of an idea of what to do, and then from here, they were in a lot of trouble, but yeah. Other than that, well played. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that game. That was my second game of this speedrun. I've had the black pieces for 2 games, and I've shown you guys how to play against knight f3 and also against e4 with the Sicilian. Yeah, sometimes it can be easy to get tunnel visioned on an attack. You think, okay, I'll just start taking here, trying to attack my opponent, and then you run out of steam. All right.